So with you, Brian Barrett. Brad.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out. I am Brad Gair with the Mayor's Office of Housing Recovery Operations. I really don't like when they read that whole long introduction of what I've done in my career recently, because it really doesn't capture the most important part of it, and that is that on all these disasters, I've made almost every mistake that you can make. And so now, either I'm going to make brand new mistakes or get it right, and I hope it's going to be I'm going to get it right. So I have done a lot of this, and my most important credential that you forgot, Congresswoman, is that I'm a Brooklyn boy, like Park Slope. Welcome, neighbors. Oh, are you clapping for Park Slope? Please feel free to. I'll clap for Red Hook. So it's great to be here in our own neighborhood and talking about this. This is really something that I'm passionate about. When Hurricane Sandy hit, I was sitting in Park Slope, high and dry. Park Slope, it's on the slope, obviously. And watching it play out. I was not a city employee at the time. I was in private consulting, and I thought, this is really interesting. I've never been on the sidelines of a major disaster like this and not been a government employee. A few days later, the mayor called me and asked me if I would become a government employee again, specifically to do this, and without hesitating, I took it on, because this is what I really, really believe in, is, no joking aside, these kinds of things have been done badly in a lot of different disasters. Hurricane Katrina was really an example of it. And we, as a government, helped depopulate one of America's great cities. We ruined the lives of lots of people, and we're not going to let that happen in New York City, any of us. So I was happy to take the job, honored to do it. What we're here to talk about tonight is the culmination of what your Congresswoman and our congressional delegation, which, by the way, did a fantastic job on this, because there are lots of states out there, believe it or not, that aren't sympathetic to New York. Imagine that. And so when they were working on this, lots of other states were saying, New York's got a lot of money, they've got a lot of needs, but why should we give them money? We don't have hurricanes, we don't have these things to worry about, why should they get something special? And one of the states that I guess can remain nameless that was arguing against us getting money for this, that our Congresswoman had to work to overcome, is from a state that not too long after that got a major tornado and was asking for money just like this, and now understanding why New York needed it. So great job by the Congresswoman and the whole delegation. We did get a total of this Community Development Block Grant, CDBG funding the Congresswoman talked about. It's very flexible dollars and can be used for lots of things, and the city is planning to use it for housing, most important to me, but also for business recovery and resiliency and infrastructure upgrades and lots of other things. $16 billion was set aside for the disaster. It's not all for New York City, it's for the whole state and the state of New Jersey and Connecticut and Rhode Island and Maryland, I believe I got that right. So we have to share it, and it's also, by the way, to help make those deals work in Congress, can be used for disasters from not just Hurricane Sandy, 2011, 2012, and 2013. So what that means to us is there still could be disasters come along happening in the next few months that could take some of that money away from us. And we want to get our needs taken care of. We don't mind sharing, but we want to get our needs taken care of, if you know what I'm talking about. So right now, we've already gotten to New York City $1.77 billion, and of that, about $700 million has come to housing, and we hope that we'll get more. So HUD only releases it in chunks, because they want to see what you're going to do with it, make sure you need more, and what you're going to use it for. So we think we've made a pretty compelling case on housing, that we need about almost $2 billion. So we have less than half of that right now. We definitely need a lot more to take care of all the housing needs, single family, multifamily, public housing, the whole spectrum. This can help with co-ops and condos, unlike FEMA. We've got a lot of flexibility. It can help with mold remediation, unlike FEMA's program. So it's really great funding. That's why CDBG is such great funding, because it's flexible. So what we've done is create a program called Build It Back. And the intent of Build It Back is to help you get back into your homes or get your homes repaired. I'm going to have a really simple test for you now. How many here had damages to their homes from Hurricane Sandy? Okay, keep that hand up. How many of you who have a hand up, raise your other hand if you've applied to Build It Back already? Uh-oh, I saw a couple of hands that don't have two hands up. Okay, so pretty good, pretty good. That's great. We've got a couple that need to sign up, and it's very easy. I'll tell you how. You can either, actually, you could probably go over here and register if you want to before you leave tonight, but it's going to wnyc.gov, and there's a link directly to Build It Back. It takes about 5 minutes to fill out the registration, or you can call 311 and they'll take your registration by phone. Very, very important to do that as soon as possible. The registration period is scheduled to close at the end of September, so the sooner you do it, the better. And again, because we have limited funds, if you wait till the end of September, frankly, we may or may not have enough money to take care of all the needs, so it's important to do it quickly. Build It Back will really, there are 4 different things that you can get from Build It Back depending on your circumstances. You can get funds to repair your home. You can get funds to rebuild your home if it's completely damaged or mostly destroyed. You can get funds to have work you've already done reimbursed, depending on what you've done and how you've done it. And you could get funds, in some cases, to actually have your property acquired if you want to move out of the area that was damaged and you were substantially damaged. You can spend just a little time on each of those so you understand how those work. The repair portion is pretty straightforward. If you have, your house is still there but it's damaged, you can get money to repair it. And if it's substantially damaged, which is a very important term in Build It Back terminology, federal government gave us that term. If you're substantially damaged, we also will pay to elevate your home when we build it back, when we do those repairs. I know there are challenges, particularly Red Hook, particularly other parts of the city, where it's not single-family detached houses, so we're going to have to deal with that. But the funding is there to help to get you elevated so you can comply with the National Flood Insurance Program. So the substantial damage piece, the way that's calculated is you take the pre-storm value of your house, not your whole property and house, just the house structure itself. That's the part of the equation. The other part of the equation is the cost to repair your home. Take the cost to repair your home, divide that by the pre-storm fair market value of your home, and if that's 51% or greater, you're substantially damaged. And if you're substantially damaged, you have to meet all building code requirements when you repair, and the building code does require you to elevate above the FEMA base flood elevation. So if you're a repair and you don't need to be, if you're not substantially damaged, we can give a grant to just do the repairs. If you are substantially damaged, we'll do whatever we need to do the elevation and the repairs at the same time. If you are a repair, the repair pathway, as we call them, you have 2 choices on how you can get those repairs done. You can either use a city-procured contractor who can schedule you in and come and do the work, and you don't have to worry about anything, permits, or any of the paperwork that goes with that. Or you can get your own contractor, if you prefer to do that. If you get your own contractor, your contractor has to play by the same rules as the city contractor, because those rules are given to us by the federal government, and basically it's for your protection. If you get your own contractor, they have to be licensed and bonded and insured, and we're going to check the quality of their work and make sure that everyone's happy with it. But you really have those 2 choices in repair. Very similar in rebuild. If you're so substantially damaged that it just doesn't make sense to try to elevate and repair, we can start from scratch. So we would demolish and start again, or if your home is completely gone, we would just build it back from the beginning. And in that pathway of rebuild, if you're in that category, same thing. We have developer teams who've been selected who will do that for you, do all the DOB filings, make sure all that paperwork is done. Or again, if you want to get your own architect and your own contractor, you can do that. The caveat, again, is have to play by the same rules, which means our developer knows how much they will build a house for in every area of the city that was damaged. If you can do it for the same amount or less, then you're fine. Or if you want to supplement it with your own funds, that's available to you too. But we sort of limit our funds to what we can build a house back for that was similar to the house that you had prior to the storm. The reimbursement piece is an interesting one, and we're finding out, by the way, that like New Yorkers, we don't wait for anything. Lots of New Yorkers have already done some repairs, maybe not all, but some. In fact, we're finding that as many as 3 out of every 4 who register for Build It Back have already done some repairs to their home. So part of what our congressional delegation asked us to do is find a way to reimburse people for work already done. Typically, that's not allowed under this program because very difficult when you go to someone's house and see a done home to know what it looked like before and to be able to tell what was done and how much it cost. So what we've been able to do is get some authorization to, essentially we'll come to your home. Yes, it's great you have receipts. We're going to want to look at those receipts, but basically we can value the work that you say was done based on the prices that are typical for the New York City market for doing construction work, line item by line item, and we would be able to reimburse you in many cases depending on your circumstance. Now, I will say under reimbursements, we want to be able to do reimbursements, but our goal is first to make people housing whole and second financially whole. So the people who don't have the money and haven't been able to do repairs or rebuild, we're going to work on them first and then hopefully work our way towards reimbursement if the money holds out, and we are really hopeful we'll have enough for that because it's very, very, very important for 3 out of every 4 people to try and get some reimbursement. The acquisition piece, buying your property. We're in Brooklyn. I don't even want to talk about that because no one would even ever want to leave Brooklyn, right? Everybody wants to stay here and rebuild. But just in case, the way that works is that if somebody wants to relocate out of the area and it's the most sensible thing to do, it's the most cost-effective thing to do, we do have a pathway where we could acquire your home and you would get the post-storm fair market value, but relocation assistance with that, with the intent to try to get you the pre-storm fair market value. And that's a weird little glitch of the way the federal government laid this out, but the intent is to get you the pre-storm fair market value or very close to it if you ended up being an acquisition and moving somewhere else, the pathway that you would go into. Those are our 4 pathways for the program, and the way we're going through this in priority order, there's no one who is ineligible because of their income. Everybody is allowed to be in the program because of their income, but we're prioritizing, so the priorities are with the people who have the lowest income, highest financial need, and the most damages first. So if you're lower income and your house is destroyed, you're at the very top of our list. And we work our way down to those who have less financial need, higher income, and less damages. And we're going to try to get as deep into that list as we can with the funding and see how far that gets us. Those are our 4 main pathways. We had a lot of questions about, people are worried about flood insurance. We understand that. I know there's going to be some discussion about flood insurance a little bit later on. And so people are saying, I'd like to have my home elevated even if I'm not substantially damaged. And frankly, right now in this program, we're not able to do that. We've estimated that to elevate all the homes that had some damage, but not substantial damage throughout the Sandy impacted areas would cost $2 billion. And then to elevate all the homes that are in the flood zone that need to be elevated so that people don't have to pay this insurance is $10 billion. So I think our friends from the what are you calling yourselves now? This SIR, still says that, resiliency, are going to talk about some of the ways that they're going to try to work to alleviate that. But right now our program just doesn't have the funds to do that. So the ones we would elevate would be the ones that are substantially damaged. So again, now let me just walk you through how the process works, and then I'm going to take some questions. I know there are a lot of other speakers. I don't want to take more than my share of the time. You register 311 or nyc.gov. You will then get a call to set up an appointment for you to come into one of our Build It Back centers, and we'll get you the locations of those because a couple of them that are closer to here are in schools that may be moving, and we're opening up one that will be a little closer to here, I think, pretty soon. So we'll get you those locations so you'll know where they'll go. But you'll get a call to come in, and by the way, we're trying to do this with great customer service. So one of the things that I wanted to avoid was people having to just come and sit and wait for hours to get a chance to come in. So we call and make an appointment with you at a time that's convenient to you, hopefully sooner rather than later. And usually right now, if you register today, you'll get a call tomorrow asking to set up an appointment. So there's not a long wait. We want to do this quickly. We know it's important. When you come in, you'll fill out a more detailed application form, and you'll be asked to provide documentation. It's all listed on our paperwork that's provided here, but it's things you would expect, things that show that you are who you say you are, that you live where you said you live, that you make how much money you said you made, that you own the property, very basic things. Some of that we can do for you because we've got an arrangement with FEMA to pull in some of their data, so we can do some of that. but some of it you'll have to do for us. You'll have to tell us what you got from private insurance because we don't know that. So you'll come in, you'll fill out your application, you'll give us documents, and then we will work on checking all that. But in the meantime, we'll be scheduling people to come to their homes and have our inspectors look at the damages and work with you to understand what you've already done and what you still need to do, because the intent of our program is to take a look at where your house needs to be back to where you want it to be. Look at how much money you've received so far from specific sources to be able to do that. So whether it's FEMA or insurance or whatever it may be, we can't give you that money again, but that money you have, we want to fill the gap with a grant. You don't pay it back, it's a grant. And that's how our program works. It's very simple, no complex formulas. It's all about filling that gap. So they'll come to your house, they'll look at that, they'll determine what those are, and then essentially we'll go back and figure out what you're eligible for, call you in again to come and talk to us about all the options, and then start to work on signing the agreements and getting on with the work. Now before I go to questions, I just want to say one quick thing about something that, again, with the congressional delegation members' help, strong help, thank you again, we were able to change, and I don't know how many of you that affects, but the SBA loan. Did any of you have SBA loans for your houses? Raise your hand, some? Okay, in some places we have lots of people who applied for SBA loans. The way it worked was when you went to FEMA and were told to, and you applied for FEMA assistance, you were also told to apply for an SBA loan. And that's because on most disasters, we never get this special money that the Congresswoman and her colleagues got for us. So if you don't get your money from FEMA and you don't get it from the Small Business Administration to fix your house, the government's not going to give you any money. That's the end of the line. So people applied, they got approved for an SBA loan, and then came along the CDBG program, and the rules that came with that said, if you're approved for a loan, you can't get the free money grant. You have to, you've got the loan, you're stuck with the loan. And so we talked to the delegation about that, and the Congresswoman and her colleagues were able to get HUD to agree to change that so that if you were approved for the loan but didn't take it, you can still back out of it now and get a grant. Now there's a few strings attached to that, and they should be pretty simple. You have to be able to explain to us why it's better to get free money than money you have to pay back. Is there anyone that doesn't think they can explain that in this economy, this day and age, why you would not want that? So we're very grateful for that being changed. It affects a lot of people citywide, and it just plain makes sense. I think I've hit all the basics of our program. Nasli, anything else I should definitely hit on? Okay, which is nyc.gov, and there's you slash build it back, or when you go there, you'll see the build it back logo on the main page that you can click on, and it lists all those documents that you need to bring with you when you come to your meeting, because the sooner you bring those in, the faster your process. A lot of people, unfortunately, are coming in and they're saying, I've got all these, but I didn't bring this one, and that's okay, but you have to come back. And we can't process you till you get us all the ones that we really need. With that, I'm going to try and answer a few questions, and then I'm going to pass it on to all these other more interesting people who are here tonight.
It's the SBA loan part. You can then essentially put your loans on hold to see what you get and build it back, and then take the money and build from SBA if you don't get sufficient money to build it back.
If you have not accepted your loan, that's correct. If you've been approved but not accepted, you don't have to take the SBA loan.
If you're not accepted, that you haven't actually received any funds.
You haven't signed the documents.
You haven't signed the documents?
You haven't signed the documents accepting the loan. We're talking to them about that gray area of people who signed the documents but didn't draw down. But right now, the only clear space they gave us was a lot of people were approved and never signed the agreements, never accepted the loan. We can definitely take care of. This other gray area, we're still working on to see if HUD will allow that as well.
Okay.
So if you've drawn down some of the funds, then you haven't drawn down.
Okay, good for you.
Okay, so we'll talk through how that. Next question. Yes, sir.
Building installed people homes, they need to pay for their own demolition.
The people need to pay for their own demolition unless they had to be demolished because they were so unsafe that they posed a public risk. So what's the question, sir?
So with Build It Back? Government will pay or still homeowner will pay?
In Build It Back, if you qualify to where your house is, you can get a new house, and it makes more sense to tear it down and build a new one than to elevate it and fix it, we will pay the cost of demolition for those, in those cases, yes. Or acquisition, and it turns out to be
We have 2 houses right now that are in this district that are so badly damaged.
have to be torn down. Yeah, we'll let DOB. Yes, sir.
If all documents and repairs have already been made to make a home habitable, but not flood resilient, can people still apply for some financial reimbursement?
Reimbursement for the work they've already done to repair their house? Yes, they definitely should, and I think, I'll emphasize it again, our first priority is fixing the houses that haven't been fixed yet because people didn't have the money to do it, and then hopefully we'll have money left over to do the reimbursements for work people already did. Yes, that's our intent.
So it was just made to make it habitable, not to elevate it or anything like that?
Repairs to make it habitable, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So lots of folks were told by their insurance companies to put things back as they were. And they were told by their banks to put things back immediately as they were. So people did that. And now they're being told that their premiums could be significantly raised. If they mitigate now and Build It Back, help them, say, raise their mechanicals, having already put those back below grade.
Right. So the question is, if you've already put things back the way they were, repaired your mechanical, electrical systems in the basement, will Build It Back pay to bring them up? The answer is yes. If you're substantially damaged, we will do that to bring into compliance. Now, our friends from Resiliency will talk about some of the efforts they're making so that there may be some help on flood insurance if you raise your mechanicals, even if you still have a basement. So they can talk a little bit about their efforts in that when their time comes.
It was just a really unfortunate thing that people spent so much money, all of their insurance money, putting these back as they were, and now, at this date, they're told that they should have done it.
Absolutely. I've not been in a more confusing time with flood maps, and I'm not even going to get into this flood insurance piece because this whole Bigger Waters Act is really up in the air, and it's going to have, we'll do another session on this unless somebody talks about it tonight, but let's do another session on that and the impacts of that on neighborhoods in New York City. Next question. Then you. First this one, then you. You can't hear me? Oh, the questions. I'll repeat the questions for you. Yeah, so that last question, I think I repeated, was about if you already have put your mechanicals back in the basement, can we pay to raise them up? The answer is if you're substantially damaged, yes, we will pay to raise them up, even if you've already reinstalled them below the base flood elevation. Did your mother ever tell you to sit in the front row in church and school? Sir.
Just briefly, I read on the Build It Back website, the FAQs, that there are some restrictions after you've accepted the help from the program. One being on selling your property. So can you speak to that?
Yes. So the question is, if you participate in Build It Back, what are the restrictions on selling the property? There's only one restriction. You have to stay there and live there for 5 years. If you don't, it's prorated. So if you live there for 2.5 years and sell it, you'd have to pay back 2.5. You'd have to pay back 50% of the dollars. So we are doing that because this is an investment in New York City that our Congresswoman worked hard to get. We want to help people to come back, stay in their neighborhoods. So if your intent is to stay in the neighborhood, all you want is a house back in Brooklyn, then you don't have to worry about anything. That's the only restriction. Yes?
You said you would pay to move the mechanical, which you could. With the apartment building restrictions, is there a way to be able to move the mechanical onto our roof? We only have one on the roof.
To move the mechanicals, I'm sorry, where? Oh, onto the roof. So if you're only one story. Okay, so the question is, will we pay to move the mechanicals if you're only one story to somewhere that's above the right elevation? So in many cases, the roof might not be the great option for that. There's actually some changes in the zoning code that allow us to essentially put them in adjacent to your house and above the right elevation. So we'll figure out how to do that if you're substantially damaged to get them above the base flood elevation somewhere in your house or associated with your house. Yes?
How do you quantify substantial damage?
Okay, I'll say substantial damage again because it's a mathematical formula. The cost to repair your home divided by the pre-storm fair market value of just the house, not the whole property. So if your property was worth, everything you have is worth $200,000, the land and the house itself, let's say, was worth $100,000. If the cost of fixing it is $51,000 or more, you're substantially damaged. If it's less than that, then you're not substantially damaged. But it's the total cost of repairing it, not the cost of elevating, the cost of fixing the house. And includes everything. We've got to look at the finishes, the fixtures, all that stuff goes into that calculation, and that's what determines substantial damage. Yes, ma'am.
Definition of what you mean by fixing the house, and does that include mitigation as well?
Right, so the question is, does fixing the house include mitigation? And similarly, the answer is yes, it includes mitigation if you're substantially damaged, because that's required by the building code. Non-substantially damaged, as I mentioned, the mitigation would be somewhere between $2 and $10 billion, and we just don't have the money. So it's for ones that are substantially damaged, yes.
I'm sorry, there's another... Sorry, so is this the same universal definition that you guys use and the DOE uses to determine substantial damage?
It's their definition, yes. It's their definition. We just play by their rules. Did you have another question?
It's just that there's other kinds of mitigation other than elevating.
Right. So our program right now can only pay for those ones that are required by the building code to get you above the base flood elevation. There's certainly lots of other things that could be done to make your home more disaster resilient.
Yes, sir. So the cost of repairs are established by you guys on your site visit, or they're based on insurance estimates, or what do they do?
They're established by us on our site visit, yes. And we're using prices that are standard across New York City.
When you factor in, because what you said is that if the substantially damaged if you reach that means that you guys are going to have the cost of the elevation in it. So at what point do you decide whether to include those costs or not to include those costs to establish the extent?
So the question is, when you're trying to figure out the substantial damage calculation, what do you do with the cost to elevate in that formula? They're not in the formula. The cost of elevation is totally separate. It's just the cost of fixing it. I'm going to take one.
Just like the insurance companies.
I'm going to take one more question and then pass it on to the next speaker. I've got a question so far away, I don't know if any of us will hear, but you'll have to speak very loud or run up closer.
So my question is, there are no income requirements for the Build It Back program, but do you make the inquiry to qualify them for other programs like the Weatherization Assistance Program?
Like which program?
The Weatherization Assistance Program.
What's the question of the relationship between this and weatherization?
Weatherization requires that either the owner or the tenant meet the income guidelines. So if Build It Back is not asking, my question is, does Build It Back ask the question to help offset those costs? Because if the homeowner qualifies for the program, it can help to offset the Build It Back funds.
So the Build It Back program, maybe I'm not entirely understanding the question. We take the income information. It's only to prioritize where you would get the work done in case we don't have enough money. It doesn't mean you're ineligible because you make a certain amount of money. We start with the lowest income, most damage, and work our way down to the higher income and least damage.
Thank you.
I thank you all very much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Brad. Really, thank you very much. Thank you.